You know, when you think about the Victorian era, a, a very specific image comes to mind.
Oh, absolutely.
It's fog, isn't it? It's cobblestones, maybe a hansom cab rattling down Baker Street.
Right. Sherlock Holmes. It's gas lamps and coal smoke
Yeah.
and stiff upper lips.
Exactly, a
But
very grounded, gritty, industrial sort of history that we all know.
It's the world from the history books.
But today,
Hmm.
the source material you've brought to the table, it sort of takes that image, crumples it up, and, I don't know, throws it into a fusion reactor.
That is a very, very accurate way to put it. We're looking at a collection of documents today that that outlines a reality that is somehow both incredibly familiar and completely alien at the same time.
We are diving into a collection called The Japanese Devilfish Girl and Other Unnatural Attractions. I know, you have to look past the title for a second.
You really do.
Because this isn't just some carnival brochure. This is a window into a world where the year is 1895. Queen Victoria is on the throne. But she isn't just the Queen of England.
No. Now, in this timeline, she holds the title Empress of India, which is, historically accurate, but also Empress of Mars.
Empress of Mars. Just say that out loud for a second.
It changes everything.
It implies so much. It implies space travel. It implies colonization, a British empire that has literally expanded across the vacuum of space.
And that right there is really the mission of this deep dive. We aren't just here to look at the cool gadgets, and believe me, there are some very cool gadgets. We will absolutely be talking about the electric fusiliers and the massive airships.
I can't wait.
But we need to unpack the cost of that expansion. Because when you read through the political minutes and the personal diaries in this source material, you start to realize that this golden age of British space travel is built on a foundation of absolute calculated horror.
It's the classic shiny apple with a rotten core scenario, isn't it? But the rot here isn't just like corruption or greed. It's biological.
It is. And it all centers on a single revelation that completely rewrites one of the most famous science fiction stories all time. We all know H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, right?
Well, of course. Martians invade, terrifying tripod machines, heat rays. Humanity is basically doomed.
Right. But then, at the very last second, what happens?
The Martians just die. They catch a cold, the common cold. Earthly bacteria kills them.
Exactly. That's the story we all know. That's the official narrative that was published. But the documents we're analyzing today, they claim that Mr. Herbert Wells was he was effectively a government propagandist.
He lied.
He lied. Or at the very least, he reported the lie he was told to report. The Martians didn't just conveniently keel over from natural causes.
No.
They were assassinated.
Assassinated. That's a strong word for a whole species.
It was targeted. It wasn't nature taking its course. It was a state-sanctioned, ruthlessly efficient, and highly specific biological weapon. And it was deployed by a man whose name in our timeline is practically synonymous with hero. But here, in this version of history, he's a war criminal.
You're talking about Winston Churchill.
I am. But you need to erase the image you have in your head. This is not the cigar-chomping V for Victory prime minister we know. We're talking about a 20-year-old, a baby-faced, ambitious, grinning young man with a heart of absolute ice.
Okay, my brain is already breaking a little bit here. We have spacefaring Victorians, a massive lie about the War of the Worlds, and a young Winston Churchill committing genocide.
That's the word for it.
We have to back up. We have to understand how we even got to this point.
We do. And to really understand the London of 1895, we have to go back 10 years. We have to look at the transcript for what the source calls the secret conclave of 1885.
A secret meeting.
Deeply secret. And the atmosphere described in the minutes. It's just suffocating.
So set the scene for us. Where is this happening?
Westminster. A dark wood-paneled room, thick with cigar smoke. And outside, the public is celebrating. They think the first Martian invasion is over, that the threat has passed. There are fireworks, street parties, a real sense of relief.
But inside this room?
Inside this room, there is absolute terror.
Because they know it's not over, it's just a pause.
They suspect it's not. And the Prime Minister, William Gladstone, is presiding. And the guest list for this conclave, I mean, if you were building a fantasy dinner party of the 19th century's greatest minds, this is pretty close.
So who's at the table?
Well, you have Gladstone, of course. You have two unnamed men, referred to only as the funereal gentleman in black.
Secret Service.
Spooks, almost certainly. Then there's the astronomer royal, a man named Silas Faircloud, who is described as looking incredibly frail, almost tubercular. A dying man, basically.
A dying man looking at the stars. It's a bit on the nose.
A little, yeah. But then you have the real heavy hitters. You have Nikola Tesla.
Okay. The wizard of electricity himself.
Very same. Brilliant, eccentric. And sitting right across from him, you have Charles Babbage.
Now wait, hold on. Let me just do a quick reality check here. Charles Babbage, the father of the computer, the guy who invented the concept of the programmable difference engine, he died in the early 1870s in our timeline.
He did. October of 1871. But in this timeline, in the world of this deep dive, Babbage is alive and well in 1885. The text describes him as jolly, wearing copious amounts of tweed. And the fact that he is alive, that single fact is the linchpin for everything that follows.
Because if Babbage is still alive, that means his difference engines, his analytical engines, they weren't just prototypes left on a shelf.
They were finished. They were funded. They were built. This society has had 15 extra years of computing power that our Victorian era never, ever had.
So they're calculating artillery trajectories, they're probably cracking Martian communications.
They're processing data at a speed that would seem like magic to us. Babbage being in that room changes the entire technological floor of their civilization.
So in this room, you have Tesla representing the future of energy.
And Babbage representing the future of data.
And according to the minutes, they are arguing.
They're having a furious debate. But it's not about mechanics or engineering. It's about biology. They're trying to figure out if it's possible to launch a counterattack on Mars.
A counterattack in 1885. With what? Steam-powered rockets.
Well, see, that's the thing. Thanks to Tesla and Babbage back engineering the few Martian ships that crashed, they have the vessels that can fly to Mars. The problem is they have no idea what's waiting for them on the red planet.
And this is where their scientific theories diverge.
Massively. And it's fascinating. Tesla takes the physicist's view.
What's his argument?
He is utterly convinced that Mars is sterile. He uses this metaphor of a mountain peak. He says the atmosphere is so thin, the solar radiation so intense that the surface would be scoured clean of any microbial life. No germs, no bacteria. To him, Mars is a planetary clean room.
Which implies, what, for the Martians themselves? That
Yeah.
they have no immune system?
That's the logical conclusion, yes.
Yeah.
If there are no germs to fight, you never evolve a defense against them. He's arguing from a standpoint of pure physics. But Babbage comes at it from a completely different angle. He pulls out the autopsy reports from the Martians who died on Earth.
Oh, wow. So they actually did autopsies.
Oh, yes. And the descriptions are gruesome. He focuses on their brains. He says they're structurally similar to sharks or porpoises.
Shark-brained. That's a terrifying image for a super intelligent alien species.
Isn't it? It suggests they have no empathy, no compassion, no fear in the way we understand it. They operate on what Babbage calls total war logic. He argues that if a shark attacks you, it doesn't hold back reserves for a second attack. It throws everything it has at you in the first go.
So Babbage's conclusion is?
He thinks, we've seen their best shot. They threw everything they had at us, and we survived. They're spent. He basically thinks the war's already won.
So in a strange way, Babbage, the mathematician, is the optimist in the room.
In a way, yes. But Gladstone, the prime minister, he's a politician. He can't deal in optimism. He deals in risk management. He looks at Tesla, he looks at Babbage, and he basically says, I can't take the chance that you're wrong. He wants a guaranteed preemptive strike. He wants to wipe them out before they can ever think about regrouping.
But how? I mean, even if they can get to Mars and captured ships, a ground invasion
would be a slaughter. The Martians still have heat rays. The British have, what, Martini Henry rifles? It wouldn't be a contest. They need an edge. Right. They need something asymmetrical.
And this is where the dark turn happens.
This is where the doors to the room open, and the boy wonder, as the text calls him, walks in.
Enter Winston Churchill.
And the description of him in the text is, it's chilling. He's 20 years old. He's smooth-faced. He's described as grinning, full of confidence. But the way she speaks, there's a complete absence of any Victorian sentimentality. No talk of honor or glory or the Queen.
He doesn't care about the rules of war.
Not even slightly. He cares about winning. And he proposes a solution that he explicitly says must never, under any circumstances, be made public.
That's never a good sign in a government meeting.
Never. He stands there and he synthesizes the two arguments. He says, essentially, Tesla is right. Mars is sterile. The Martians almost certainly have no immunity. And Babbage is right. The Martians are biological organisms. They can get sick and die just like any other animal. So he puts the two ideas together. He proposes a Trojan horse.
But instead of soldiers inside the horse,
he wants to send what he calls plague ships.
Plague ships?
He proposes taking 3 of the repaired Martian vessels And he wants to pack them not with explosives, not with soldiers, but with people.
People? What people?
Incurables, he calls them. He wants to go to the chronic wards of London's hospitals and round up 1,500 civilians, people who are already dying.
Dying of what?
Whooping cough, scarlet fever, diphtheria, cholera, typhus. A whole cocktail of the worst diseases the 19th century has to offer.
My God. He wants to weaponize the sick. He's proposing turning dying British citizens into living biological bombs.
Exactly. And the way he sells it, it's just pure, cold, utilitarian calculus. He looks Prime Minister Gladstone in the eye and says, "Gentlemen, with this single act, I can empty 1,500 beds in the chronic wards."
He frames it as a cost-saving measure for the healthcare system.
He does. A way to clear out the hospitals and solve the Martian problem in one fell swoop. It is monstrous. It's efficient, but monstrous.
The audacity of it is breathtaking.
And there's this one moment in the transcript that just perfectly captures his callousness. Churchill is rattling off this list of deadly diseases, and then almost as an aside, he adds, and of course, genital crabs.
He said that in a room with the Prime Minister of Great Britain.
He did. And Babbage, of all people, the jolly man in tweed, actually interrupts him. He's the only one who questions the logic. He says, "People don't die from genital crabs, young man."
And what was Churchill's response?
Without missing a beat, he just smiles and says, "They do if they give them to me."
Wow.
It's a joke, a bleak, terrible joke. He's standing there planning a suicide mission for 1,500 people, and he's cracking jokes. It just shows you the level of psychological detachment he has. These people aren't human beings to him, they're ammunition.
Does anyone else object? What about Fairclough, the astronomer royal, the supposed humanitarian in the room?
He tries to. The source says he squirmed. He starts to say, as a humanitarian, to sanction such a thing would be. But he trails off. He can't finish the sentence.
Why not?
Because the fear is too strong. The memory of the Martian tripods marching across the home counties. It overrides whatever moral objection he might have. The fear of what the Martians could do is greater than the horror of what they're about to do.
So they agree. They actually agree to this plan.
They sign the order, the ships are prepared, the cargo is loaded, and they are launched towards Mars. And the plan, it works perfectly.
The Martians see their own ships returning.
They open their silo doors, they welcome them home. The plagued ships land. The sick, dying passengers disembark into the Martian cities. And within weeks, silence.
The great silence.
Mars dies. A planetary-scale genocide caused not by heat rays or cannons, but by whooping cough and cholera delivered by the British government.
Once the dying is done.
Then the flags come out. Then the Queen's own electric fusiliers land to claim the empty, silent cities. And the history books are written by H.G. Wells to say, we fought them on the beaches of Mars and we won.
While conveniently leaving out the part about the 1,500 sick people they sent to die alone on a cold red rock.
Exactly. And that dark, terrible secret. That is the foundation of the world we're about to see in 1895. Everything that comes next, all the luxury, the incredible technology, the supreme confidence of the British Empire, it's all built on that hidden planetary mass grave.
That changes the entire lens through which we have to view the next part of the source material. Because now the narrative jumps forward 10 years. It's 1895. The war is a distant memory. And we are looking at the maiden flight of a new airship. A ship called the Empress of Mars.
Oh, what a ship it is. If the conclave was a dark, cramped, smoke-filled room, this is the absolute opposite. This is all light and air and staggering opulence.
The description of this thing is almost overwhelming. The source says it's 1/3 of a mile long. Just try to visualize that. A rigid airship, 1/3 of a mile in length, just drifting silently over London.
It's less a ship and more an aerial city, a flying palace. And the interior design. Every detail tells you something about the economy of this new interplanetary empire.
Okay, so take us inside. What does it look like?
You enter the Grand Salon. The walls are covered in these beautiful, intricate fabrics designed by Sir William Morris, very trendy for the era. But the carpets, they aren't from Persia or Turkey.
No, the source says they are octagonal carpets of the Jovian persuasion.
From Jupiter. They are trading for luxury goods with aliens from Jupiter and the flowers and the vases. They're not English roses, they're orchids, brought back from the deepest jungles of Venus.
So it's this incredible fusion of classic Victorian luxury and alien exoticism. It's conspicuous consumption on a galactic scale. It's a way of saying, look where we can go, look what we can take.
And look at the people on board. The passengers are the absolute cream of society. But their fashion has had to evolve to match this new environment. The men are wearing top hats, of course. You can't be a proper gentleman without a top hat,
But these top hats, they have inlaid evening goggles.
which is such a brilliant, practical little detail. If you're traveling in the upper atmosphere or on a vessel between planets, the glare from the sun is blinding. You need eye protection.
Right, but you can't just wear, like, welding goggles to a fancy ball.
Exactly. So they integrate them, they inlay them into the brim of the hat, they make them decorative, part of the formal wear. It's function becoming fashion.
And what about the women?
Corsets of filigreed brass.
Brass. Why brass?
Well, think about it. The pressure changes between decks, the industrial aesthetic of the ship itself. It's steampunk couture. It's almost like a form of armor disguised as high fashion. It signals that these women are part of this new machine age. They are tough, metallic, imperial.
The whole ship, the whole event. It's a victory lap, isn't it? It's the 10th anniversary of the victory on Mars.
It's the ultimate display of power. And as these people look down over the railings, staring at London below, the city itself looks different. It's been transformed.
Completely. And this is where we see the direct legacy of those men who were in that secret conclave. We see the Babbage Institute for the Advancement of Science dominating the skyline. It's described as a veritable fortress of calculation, which implies that government policy is now being run by algorithms, by mechanical computers.
Or at least heavily supported by them. With Babbage alive and funded for another decade and a half, the algorithm exists in 1895. Governance has become mathematical. They're almost certainly using these immense engines to predict crop yields, troop movements, trade deficits, maybe even to forecast civil unrest. It's a surveillance state run on brass gears.
But the most striking visual change, according to the source, is the light. In our 1895, London was dark. It was gas lamps and deep shadows, Jack the Ripper territory.
But here, the London of this world is glowing. The Crystal Palace, that great glass exhibition hall that was moved to Sydenham Hill, it's ablaze with light. But it's not fire.
It's Tesla's wireless power. It's his big dream come to life.
Yes. The source describes 10,000 neon tubes, all glowing brightly, without any wires touching them. They're being powered by a massive induction loop buried under the hill.
Which is exactly what he tried to do with Wardenclyffe Tower in our world. He wanted to transmit energy through the air, but he ran out of money.
But in this world, with the immense resources of the Martian Empire at his disposal, he succeeded. So the night sky over London isn't black anymore. It's bathed in a neon glow. It's an electric, humming, clean-looking future.
It really does sound like a utopia.
From a distance, it looks like one. It's beautiful. But you have to remember what we just learned.
The bones.
The bones. All of that beautiful neon light is illuminating a society that committed an atrocity to get there. And as we're about to find out, the aliens in this world aren't just the dead Martians. There are others. And they are watching.
And let's go back to that carpet from Jupiter for a second, because you don't get carpets from Jupiter unless you're trading with Jovians.
And that's the next big twist the source material reveals. While Britain was busy committing genocide on Mars, it turns out, humanity wasn't alone in the solar system. Not by a long shot.
Visitors from Venus and Jupiter have been coming to Earth.
For decades, apparently. But they were hiding. They were observing, but they kept a very low profile. And the question is why?
Well, if I were an advanced alien and I looked at 19th century Earth with all its wars and colonialism, I'd probably say hidden too. It doesn't seem like a safe place to introduce yourself.
Exactly. But something changed. The moment Britain wiped out the Martians, the entire geopolitical calculus of the solar system shifted. The British proved, in the most brutal way imaginable, that they were the new alpha predator of the inner planets.
So the Venusians and the Jovians decided it was safer to be friends than to stay hidden?
They came forward. They revealed themselves. They approached the British Empire not as conquerors, but as diplomats, as trading partners. And now there's a Congress of Planets.
That is just a fascinating case of political maneuvering. It's almost like they collectively said, okay, you guys are clearly crazy and ruthless enough to use biological weapons on a planetary scale. We should probably be on your good side.
It's respect that's born from pure fear. And it creates this incredible cosmopolitan scene on the Empress of Mars. You have British dukes in their top hats with the goggles, rubbing shoulders with Jovian potentates who are described as being, these large gaseous beings in containment suits.
But it's important to meet the distinction the source makes, isn't it? The Martians were described as shark-brained, ugly, unsavory.
They were monsters.
So it was okay to kill them. But the Venusians and Jovians, they're welcomed. They get to come to the party.
It really highlights the hypocrisy and the superficiality of this empire. Appearance is everything. The Martians look scary, so they were a threat to be eliminated. The Venusians, as we'll see later, are described as being beautiful, almost angelic, so they're potential allies.
It's a very pragmatic and very cynical worldview,
Deep.
which is actually a perfect segue because we've spent a lot of time looking down on this world from the deck of a luxury airship. I think we need to go down to the ground. We need to see what this neon-lit world looks like for the people who aren't wearing brass corsets and drinking Venusian wine.
We need to meet George Fox.
George Fox, I love this character. In a story that's filled with prime ministers and alien ambassadors and scientific geniuses, he's just a guy.
He's our anchor to reality. He's a showman's assistant. He lives in a traveling wagon. He's young, described as lanky, and he's full of ambition. But his day-to-day reality is a million miles away from the glamour of the Crystal Palace.
His reality is cleaning a large glass tank.
A tank containing a pickled Martian. A dead specimen from the war, preserved for public display.
And he hates this thing. He viscerally hates it.
He takes it so personally.
Yeah.
The source gives us his internal monologue, and he feels like the dead alien is constantly watching him, judging him with its dead eyes. Every time the wagon hits a bump in the muddy road, the formalin, the preservative fluid, splashes on him.
Which smells absolutely terrible, by the way. Formalin is basically formaldehyde, so he walks around smelling like a morgue.
He reeks of it. And that's his life. He's traveling through the muddy lanes of Brentford, cleaning a dead monster, and working for a man named Professor Coffin.
Professor Coffin. Now, there is a character name, and he's described as looking like Mr. Punch.
The puppet, yes.
Mm-hmm.
A hook nose, a manic, almost violent energy. He's a classic trickster figure. He runs this traveling show of unnatural attractions.
Mm-hmm.
And the inventory of this show, it's just this wonderful collection of delightful nonsense.
We have to list some of these. It's too good.
Oh, absolutely. In the back of this wagon, he has the holistical mirror, which he claims can show you anything in the whole world. He has a stone that he swears is from the actual Tower of Babel.
And my personal favorite, of course, the Clockwork Pig of Destiny.
The Clockwork Pig of Destiny, which, according to the professor, can solve advanced mathematical equations and it gauge the circumference of ladies' knees.
It's just such a weirdly specific, very Victorian detail. It captures that era's dual obsession with incredible mechanical automatons and slightly creepy, inappropriate humor.
But here's the crucial thing. George knows it's all fake. He's the one who has to wind the pig. He knows the Japanese devilfish girl from the title is probably just a desiccated monkey sewn to a codfish. He knows it's all a sham, but he stays. Why?
Because he has ambition. He looks up at the sky, he sees the Empress of Mars drifting overhead, he sees the Crystal Palace glowing on the hill, and he wants in.
He dreams of owning the Crystal Palace one day. He dreams of being the one inside the party, not the poor schmuck cleaning up the mess outside.
It's that universal desire to rise above your station. It's the driving engine of the 19th century. Everyone thought that with enough pluck and luck, they could be the next great industrialist, or in this case, the next Tesla.
And it's that burning desire that makes him so vulnerable. George thinks he's smarter than the local rubes who pay a penny to see the Clockwork Pig. But when he tries to step out of his own social lane, the world slaps him down hard.
And this leads us to the central incident of his story, which takes place at the Crystal Palace.
Right. George scrubs himself clean. He tries to get the smell of formalin off. He puts on his best, but still very cheap, suit. And he goes to the palace celebrations.
He's not trying to get in, not at first. He just wants to be near the magic.
Exactly. He's standing in the crowd, watching the elites arrive in their carriages. And then he gets a tap on the shoulder.
It's a young woman. And the source drops a name here that, again, made me do a complete double take.
Ada Lovelace.
Now, once again, for the history buffs listening, Ada Lovelace, daughter of the poet Lord Byron, a mathematical genius, often credited as being the world's first computer programmer. In our timeline, she died very young in 1852.
But here, like Babbage, she's alive.
Yeah.
But she's not presented as the mathematical visionary we think of. In this context, she's a young, beautiful, and slightly manipulative high society woman. And for some reason, out of the whole crowd, she spots George.
Why George? What's she see in him?
She sees someone who looks desperate. And because of that, she sees someone who looks useful. She approaches him, playing the part of the damsel in distress. She claims to be lost, a little frightened of the rough crowd. And then she dangles the bait. She says she has a spare ticket to the royal concert inside.
She is appealing directly to his vanity. She's treating him like a gentleman, like her equal.
And George just eats it up. This is his movie moment, his Cinderella story. He thinks, Finally, someone sees my true quality beneath this cheap suit. He offers her his arm. He becomes her gallant knight, escorting her through the pushing crowds. He's walking toward the gleaming gates of the Crystal Palace with Ada Lovelace on his arm. In his mind, he is soaring.
And then comes the crash, the inevitable crash.
They get right up to the entrance. Ada stops. She says something like, "Oh, I simply must visit the ladies somewhere. Would you be a dear and hold my spot?" She acts flustered. She gives the ticket to a guard, or so George thinks, slips through the gate, and she's gone.
She just used him.
She used him as a human shield, a battering ram to get through the crush of the crowd. She never had a ticket for him. She probably didn't even have a spare ticket at all. She just needed a disposable bodyguard for 5 minutes, and he fit the bill.
And when George, confused, tries to explain this to the guards at the gate.
The guards, who are described as swarthy, turbaned men, likely colonial veterans from the Indian subcontinent, they don't listen to his story. They look at his cheap suit. They probably catch that faint, lingering scent of formalin on him, and they know exactly what he is in their eyes.
A trespasser.
They beat him. The source is very blunt about it. They beat him brutally right there in front of everyone, and they call him a common fairground hobbledehoy.
That word just hurts. Hobbledehoy. It means a clumsy, awkward, oafish youth. It's designed to strip away every last shred of his dignity.
It's the world's way of reminding him of his place. It's a brutal lesson that in this futuristic society, technology has changed, but the class system hasn't budged an inch. You can have wireless power, you can have spaceships that travel to Jupiter, but if you're a poor kid from a traveling show, you are invisible. And if you try to cross that line and mix with your betters, you get punished for it.
It's a really harsh reality check. George isn't the hero of some rags to riches story. He's just a prop in someone else's life.
But that encounter wasn't entirely a waste, because on that walk to the palace before the betrayal happened, Ada and George talked. And they talked about something very, very strange. They talked about the Venusians.
Right. And this is where the world building takes a very sharp left turn away from science fiction and into something more like fantasy.
It really does. Ada asks George what he thinks of the Venusian visitors, and she describes them. She says they're tall, with pure white hair and golden eyes. They're inhumanly beautiful. They smell of a strange alien perfume.
But then she mentions their biology, and
Yeah.
it's odd. She says they have 3 sexes.
Male, female, and of the spirit.
I have to stop you there. What on earth does of the spirit mean? Is that a biological reality? A philosophical one?
The source material is deliberately vague, but it implies a biological caste that isn't reproductive in the physical sense. Maybe they're empaths or telepaths or religious figures,
Yeah.
conduits for something else. It just adds to their profound alien nature. But the real kicker is their technology.
Okay, so Tesla has his induction loops. Babbage has his calculating engines. What do the Venusians use to power their ships?
They fly in holier than aircraft.
That's a terrible pun. I absolutely love it.
It's an accurate description, though. Their ships don't use fuel. They don't have engines or boilers. The source says they're powered by faith, by prayer, by focused, collective mental and spiritual energy.
That's wild. So you have a universe where hard, industrial, materialist science coexists with literal space magic.
And that creates an enormous tension. Even Ada, a member of the elite, admits she finds the Venusians scary. She compares them to a fencing foil. They look elegant, beautiful, and delicate, but they're still a deadly weapon. She senses a threat beneath the surface.
But her boss, Professor Coffin, when George gets back to the wagon, bruised and beaten up, Coffin takes that suspicion even further.
Much further. Coffin calls them black magicians.
Straight up, no ambiguity.
None. He's sitting there at his little table, eating his breakfast, looking at George's black eye, and he just starts ranting about the Venusians. He thinks they're too nice. He doesn't trust their sweet and kindly nature. He thinks it's all a trap.
And he launches into this whole theological theory to explain why. And honestly, it's one of the most unique takes on the nature of magic and religion I've ever come across in a source like this.
It's amazing. He calls it the theology of magic. He sits George down and asks him a question. Who was the first magician?
And the answer isn't Merlin or some ancient wizard. He says the first magician was Moses.
Right. Coffin puts forward this theory that when Moses went up Mount Sinai, he didn't just come back with the 2 stone tablets of the 10 Commandments. God also gave him a third item, a grimoire, a book of spells, a book of good magic, holy magic, meant to help humanity build and create.
Like a user manual for the universe, handed down from the creator.
Exactly, a tool for good. But then what happens? Moses comes down the mountain. He sees the Israelites worshiping the golden calf. He gets so furious that he throws down the stone tablets and they smash. But in his rage, he also throws down the magic book.
And unlike the stone tablets, which just broke, the book, it doesn't just break, the pages scatter.
Coffin says the book shattered into 1,000 pieces. The pages were caught by the wind and blown all across the world. And who found those scattered pages? Not the faithful. The pages were picked up by the idol worshippers, the greedy, the people with darkness in their hearts.
So the good magic intended for humanity was corrupted, it was twisted, it became black magic.
That is Professor Coffin's grand unified theory. He believes that all the magic in the world, all the witchcraft, all the sorcery, it's all just broken fragments of that original holy book, but it's been warped and misused by the evil people who found it. And he is convinced that the Venusians, with their faith-powered ships, are using that twisted, corrupted magic.
That's a heavy concept.
Yeah.
So in this world, you have the British Empire, which represents cold, hard science killing Martians with bacteria, building analytical engines, harnessing electricity. And you have the Venusians, who represent this corrupted holiness, magic.
It sets up a fundamental conflict that is so much bigger and more interesting than just Earth versus Mars. It's a conflict between materialism and mysticism. And Professor Coffin is terrified that the British, with all their guns and their airships and their arrogance, have absolutely no idea what they're truly dealing with.
They think they are the masters of the universe because they beat the ugly shark-brain Martians. But they might be walking straight into a trap set by beautiful, angelic-looking space wizards.
Precisely. And poor George Fox is just the guy stuck in the middle, nursing a black eye and trying to figure out which side isn't going to beat him up next.
Man, when you lay it all out like that, this deep dive has covered a lot of ground. We've gone from a secret genocidal plot in Westminster to high fashion on an airship, from the gutter of a fairground to the stars, and then all the way back to the Bible.
It's a very dense, very layered reality, no question.
So let's try to pull it all together. What is the big picture here? If you had to boil this entire crazy world down to one central theme, what would it be?
For me, it has to be appearance versus reality. I think of it as the glass box problem.
The glass box, explain that.
Think about that tank that George Fox has to clean every day. It's a glass box. From the outside, it looks clean, transparent, scientific. But what's inside? A dead, rotting thing floating in poison.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
The British Empire in 1895 is that glass box. It looks shiny and new on the outside. It has neon lights and brass goggles and victory parades and interplanetary trade. But inside, it's rotting. It's built on the dead bodies of 1,500 of its own sick people. It's built on a monstrous lie.
And that theme extends to the people as well.
Absolutely. Ada Lovelace looks like an angel, a perfect high society lady.
The L'Oreal.
She's a predator who uses and discards people. The Venusians look like benevolent space elves, bringing peace and trade. The reality. According to Coffin, they might be black magicians plotting something terrible.
Nothing is what it seems on the surface.
Nothing. And that makes this world an incredibly dangerous place to live. Because if you trust your eyes the way George trusted Ada's innocent act, you get hurt badly.
And that leads us, I think, to the final question we should leave with our listeners. The big provocative thought.
Right. Usually when we look at aliens in science fiction, we're meant to ask, are they the monsters? We look at the Martians from H.G. Wells with their tentacles and heat rays and shark brains, and we say, yes, obviously that's the monster.
It's always easy to hate the ugly thing, the thing that doesn't look like us.
But look at the British Empire in this story. Look at the civilized gentlemen in their tweed suits sitting around a table in Westminster. They didn't fight an honorable war. They planned and executed a cold-blooded extermination. They used their own sick and dying citizens as ammunition, and then they edited the history books to make themselves look like heroes.
So who are the real monsters here?
Is it the shark-brained alien that acts on a brutal but understandable instinct for survival? Or is it the educated, cultured, baby-faced Englishman who calmly calculates the most efficient way to commit genocide and then jokes about it?
I think the answer is pretty clear. The monster isn't under the bed. It's not coming from another planet. It's sitting at the head of the table in Parliament.
And that, I think, is the most terrifying truth of this entire alternate timeline. The bad guys won, and they made the world beautiful to cover up the crime.
Well, on that cheery note.
Ah, yes, sorry.
No, seriously though, this is exactly why we do these deep dives. To scratch beneath that beautiful surface and see what's really going on underneath.
Even if what's underneath smells faintly of formalin.
Especially then. Listeners, we have to ask you, knowing what you know now, would you buy a ticket on the Empress of Mars? Or would you stay in the wagon with Professor Coffin and his clockwork pig?
I think I'd take my chances with the pig. It seems like the most honest character in the entire story.
That's a good choice. Keep digging deep, everyone, and always remember, history is written by the victors, but the truth is usually buried in the footnotes.
Indeed. Until next time.
See you in the next deep dive.